The golden glow of a fading sun stretched across the playground, turning the swings into long shadows that swayed gently in the evening breeze. Children's laughter rang out like music, bouncing between the metal slide and the spinning roundabout, carrying with it the innocence of joy. But among the blur of running feet and carefree voices sat a girl who did not join the games. She was still, almost too still, her small hands clenched tightly around the cold metal arms of her wheelchair. Her name was Amara, 12 years old, fragile in body but strong in spirit, though most who looked at her never saw that strength. They only saw the chair. Once, Amara had been the first to chase the ball, the first to climb the jungle gym, her laughter soaring above the noise of the crowd. But an accident months earlier had taken more than her ability to walk. It had stolen the rhythm of her young life and left behind whispers that followed her wherever she went, whispers of pity, of difference, of weakness. And tonight, as the golden sky deepened into amber, Amara longed for just one simple thing: to feel like she belonged again. Her eyes followed the slide, its silver surface catching the last rays of daylight. The children shrieked with delight as they raced to climb it, pushing and laughing as though the world revolved around that single tower of joy. Amara inhaled deeply, her chest rising with a fragile hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could ask to join them. Her fingers trembled as she slowly wheeled herself forward, the crunch of gravel beneath her tires sounding louder in her ears than all the laughter around her. At first, the children barely noticed. But as she drew closer, their play slowed. A boy with a baseball cap tilted his head, smirking, while another nudged his friend and whispered something that made them both snicker. Amara swallowed hard and forced a smile, her voice shaking as she asked, "Can I try the slide?" The air shifted. What could have been a moment of acceptance became something else entirely. The circle tightened around her. A girl with pigtails rolled her eyes. "The slide isn't for babies in chairs," she said, her tone dripping with cruel amusement. Another boy stepped forward, mocking the way Amara's hands trembled on the wheels. His imitation drew laughter, laughter that was sharper now, crueler, cutting through Amara's chest like broken glass. Amara's face flushed, her throat tightening. "Please, just let me—" But her words were drowned in giggles and chants, the circle growing tighter. One child walked behind her and lightly tugged on the handles of her wheelchair, making her jolt forward in panic. The others roared with laughter, their jeers echoing off the empty benches at the edge of the playground. She tried to push back, tried to wheel herself out of the circle, but every move she made was blocked by a wall of mocking smiles. Her heart pounded, her palms slick with sweat as her voice trembled. "Stop, please stop." But kindness was nowhere to be found. The laughter grew bolder, meaner. The children had discovered a new game, and Amara was their unwilling prize. A boy darted forward and placed his hands on her wheels, pretending to spin them like a toy car. "Vroom, vroom!" he shouted, his cruel mimicry sparking another round of hysterical giggles. The sound filled Amara's ears until it drowned out everything else, the chirping birds, the hum of traffic beyond the park fence. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears that burned at the corners of her eyes. How had joy turned into this nightmare? She had only wanted to feel human again, to feel normal. Instead, she sat trapped in a cage of laughter, a prisoner in plain sight. But what happened next would push her to the very edge of fear. One boy, taller than the rest and clearly their leader, stepped closer. His sneakers crunched against the gravel, slow and deliberate. He stopped just inches from her, his shadow falling across her lap as the last of the sunlight dimmed. His hand reached out, wrapping tightly around the cold handles of her wheelchair. He leaned in, his eyes gleaming with a sinister delight. The laughter of the others faded into an expectant silence, every child waiting to see what he would do. Amara's breath caught in her throat, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might burst. His grip tightened, and with a low voice, almost a whisper meant only for her, he said, "What's the matter? Can't run away?" Her tears finally broke free, streaming down her pale cheeks. The playground, once filled with laughter, now felt like a stage set for cruelty. The other children stood frozen, caught between fear of him and fascination with his cruelty. And in that moment, Amara realized she was utterly alone, trapped in a circle of silence and shadows. The boy's fingers flexed on the handles of her chair, and the corners of his mouth curved into a smile that was anything but kind. The scene hung in the air, unbearable, the question echoing louder than the laughter had ever been. What would he do next? And just as the sun disappeared completely behind the horizon, leaving the playground bathed in twilight, Amara's terrified eyes lifted to meet his. The screen fades to black, because what happened in the very next moment would change everything. The playground had fallen into a cruel silence, broken only by the shallow breaths of a frightened girl. Amara's wheelchair stood pinned under the grip of the ringleader, his shadow stretching long in the fading twilight. Her tears shimmered against her cheeks, catching the last of the dying sun. The bullies leaned closer, their laughter sharp and heartless, until a new sound cut through the air. It was not loud, it was not rushed, yet it carried the weight of command. "Let go of her," the voice came from the shadows near the rusted playground gate, deep, steady, and unshakable. Every head turned toward it, and in an instant, the cruel laughter dissolved into stunned silence. From the darkness stepped Ayan, Amara's older brother. Tall for his 16 years, his presence filled the space like a storm cloud rolling in. He didn't rush, he didn't shout. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, echoing against the cracked pavement as if each step were a warning. The air grew heavy, and for the first time, the children who had laughed so easily felt something colder than fear. Shame. Ayan's eyes locked on his sister, fragile and trembling. The sight pierced through him like a blade. He had been watching from a distance, giving her the space she craved, but the moment he saw their cruelty tighten its hold, he knew he could no longer stand still. His fists clenched at his sides, but he forced himself to breathe. Rage would solve nothing. Rage would only make her feel smaller. The boy who held Amara's chair faltered, his smirk slipping. "We were just joking," he muttered, his voice suddenly unsure. But the excuse died on his lips when Ayan's gaze fell upon him. He knelt down beside Amara, his knees pressing against the gravel, lowering himself to her level while the bullies stood frozen. His hand brushed the tears from her cheeks with a gentleness that contrasted the storm brewing in his chest. "You," he said softly but loud enough for every ear to hear, "are braver than all of them combined." The words struck the children harder than any punch could have. Ayan didn't look at them yet. He wanted Amara to hear it first, to believe it. She sniffled, her lips trembling, the faintest glimmer of relief sparking in her frightened eyes. For weeks she had carried the weight of pity, the sting of whispers, the shadow of being different. In that one sentence, he had handed her back her strength. But then his eyes rose, cold and unwavering, locking on the group that surrounded them. Not hatred, not rage. Something worse, disappointment. And the silence that followed was unbearable. "Strength isn't measured in how fast you can run," he said, his voice cutting through the stillness, "or how hard you can laugh at someone weaker. Strength is measured in kindness, and tonight, not one of you has shown it." The children shifted uneasily, their feet scraping against the ground. Some looked away, others stared at the dirt. Their leader, the one who had gripped Amara's chair, released his hold as if the handles burned his hands. But what happened next would shock everyone watching. Ayan stood slowly, his shoulders broad against the darkening sky. For a heartbeat, it seemed as though he might explode with anger. But instead, he stepped aside, bent down, and gently placed his hands on his sister's wheelchair. He whispered just for her, "You deserve every joy in life, and nothing, no one, will ever take that from you." The bullies stood paralyzed, watching as he wheeled her forward, Not away, not toward safety, but toward the very slide she had wanted so desperately to try. The air seemed to hold its breath. Could she? Would she dare? Amara's eyes widened in disbelief. The slide had felt like an unreachable dream, a symbol of everything she had lost. Yet here was her brother, steady and unafraid, telling her with his actions that her dreams were still hers to claim. The children's silence deepened. The ringleader shifted awkwardly, suddenly looking smaller than ever before. The girl with pigtails bit her lip, her earlier cruelty shrinking into regret. One by one, the bullies backed away, their dominance shattered, not by fists or threats, but by something far stronger: dignity. The playground, once loud with cruelty, was now hushed. Only the whisper of the wind through the swings remained, a reminder of the storm that had passed. Ayan positioned Amara at the base of the slide. Her hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from awe. He crouched again, meeting her eyes. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Always." And in that moment, with the children watching in stunned silence, Ayan helped his sister climb, inch by inch, step by step, up the side of the slide. It wasn't graceful, and it wasn't easy, but it was real. Every movement was a victory. And when Amara finally sat at the top, the setting sun broke through the clouds, casting her in golden light. For the first time in weeks, a smile spread across her face. Not forced, not tentative, but pure and radiant. She was not the girl in the chair. She was Amara, the girl who still belonged on the slide, the girl who still belonged everywhere. The bullies watched in silence, their hearts heavy with something they had not expected to feel: guilt. They would remember this moment, the quiet power of a brother's love, long after they left the playground. And as Ayan stood below, arms outstretched, waiting to catch his sister at the bottom of the slide, the story carved itself into every heart present. Sometimes the strongest voice in the world is not anger, but love. But what Ayan and Amara did not know was that this night would mark the beginning of something even greater, because the memory of this moment would spread far beyond the playground. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who believes in kindness. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were there in that playground?